Hello, I'm Robert, fact checker and science blogger. This time is for people, it's to do with Covid-19 and people are scared of it in the UK. I've already talked about how you can protect yourself. Now I'm going to talk about what the United Kingdom government has to do. So this is about the situation we're facing. So I'll first talk, so that's the important bit. We have got to the situation where we have not kept track of where it is in our population. And the WHO, they were talking early today about how the testing for mild cases is not just to find, isolate and quarantine the mild cases, but it's very important to isolate the mild cases and quarantine their contacts. It's also about finding out how it is transmitting. So it was from testing all the cases that South Korea discovered that big church was a big super spreader event, and they also discovered apparently a super spreader event in a local hospital. And we are not testing, so we don't know if any of these events are going on, but there may well be super spreading events going on. And with all the isolating, us being locked in our households, but then there's still things going on. There's the essential work, there's the hospitals, and some of those can be super spreader events. There's people caring for elderly people in care homes, and we have no testing, so we have no way of knowing. And then it seems quite likely that Boris Johnson was involved in a kind of super spreading event amongst the government, and that there's maybe be some super spreading events amongst universities and in hospitals. And then they're gradually taking it more seriously. But there probably have been several of these and we just haven't seen them. And so, for sure, it seems almost certain that there have been super spreading events amongst our hospitals, because just about every country that has had Covid-19 has had them. And in most cases they've been very, very careful, and they've really learned the lesson from that and they've stopped it. They've done all sorts of things to try and reduce them. Even so, Italy, taking a lot of care, they have over 60 doctors died of this. In the UK we've had our first 2 doctors die, and about a quarter of our doctors are off sick at the moment, either with Covid-19 or isolating with someone who possibly with suspected Covid-19. It's not tested, even if it's mild. Anyway, I don't want to go into great detail about that. It's all a bit depressing and sad. But and many of our doctors may die. But what I'm trying to say here is that I think the government has got a huge shock coming. I don't think they realise quite how bad it is. Once they realise, then I think it's going to trigger the British spirit, which is not to lie down and let things run over you, but to fight back. We will definitely fight back. There's no way. We've been very determined, but doing the wrong things. I think we're going to fight back in a big way once we discover what's happened. And so I give the example in this article of the Spitfires, for instance, World War II. So, I mean, you get a different narrative in the United States, I know, but in the United Kingdom, we think of the United Kingdom, that we held off the Nazis in World War II, and that it was the Battle of Britain was the key thing, where we produced loads and loads of Spitfires, and just by flying against the Nazis, then we were able to stop them from invading the United Kingdom. And in the UK, we think that was what stopped them, and that if they'd invaded the United Kingdom, then it would have been pretty much very difficult to do anything about it at that point. And the key to that were the Spitfires, and because they were very fast, agile machines back then. I mean, the Spitfires were miracles to back in that time. Very, very fast machines, like the fastest fastest fighters in the world, and but I think they're pretty fast anyway. And they were fighting against the Nazis, and so when you look at these, to us they look archaic and ancient. To them, think of them being super advanced machines that they were building and they built 22,000 of these very, very advanced machines. And all the pictures of this factory, these vast numbers, and these mostly women workers building them, the bits and pieces that go together to make these Spitfires. And this massive war effort, building thousands of them, 22,000 in total in this factory in Birmingham. So, if we can certainly rise to that situation. So every country talks about its fighting spirit, I know. But the United Kingdom, we talk about the legendary British fighting spirit. So we have legendary French fighting spirit, legendary Scottish fighting spirit. But we can certainly rise to this. And I think this will lead to us rising to it. And but what we have to build is not fighting machines. What we have to build, not fighting planes. We need to build machines that will let us find the virus. So I think we're going to build possibly these, for instance. This is one way of doing it. These machines by Roche Diagnostics, 400 of those machines can test 1 million samples in a day. So just like we built 22,000 Spitfires in World War II, I'm sure we can build 400 of these machines if we get a license from Roche Diagnostics or something, or pay for them to do it, or whatever, whatever the reason, licensing or some way or other. So this mightn't be the only way to do it. And these are largely automated. They don't require specialists doing an awful lot of work. These machines automate the whole process. And you just put things in and they twirl around and they do their stuff. And the machines do it all for you. And they do, and this one can test 2,500 samples a day. This big machine, if you just keep it running constantly, as we would. And so that would be enough. So if you really, really want to do something about the 1.2 million NHS health workers, if you wanted to do something about that as fast as possible, then you test absolutely all of them, whether symptomatic or asymptomatic. And that's how to get out of a hospital. So if you find an outbreak in one particular hospital, then you test all the patients and all the doctors in that hospital, whether they've got any symptoms or not. And that will find all the people who currently have it, who've got symptoms. Also find them in 2 or 3 days, and some people say 5 days it could be, until they get the symptoms. So you're cutting it off at the root very, 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 very deeply if you do that. And if you test everyone, symptomatic or asymptomatic, and then you isolate them all, and maybe you move the patients to a proper Covid-19 hospital for the ones that have it, and then any doctors with Covid-19 or pre-symptomatic, they can go to the Covid-19 hospital and work there until they get it, because they know they've already got it, so they're not going to get it from those patients. And they did this in Italy. They first of all cleared a hospital, and then they cleared an entire town of 3,300 people. And the first test, they found 3% had it. They isolated all those 3%, symptomatic or asymptomatic. And then 2 weeks later, only 0.3% of the town had it. And then after that, they had no new cases. So that's a very, very fast reduction, a 10-fold reduction, just by testing everyone, symptomatic or asymptomatic. So if you look at the UK's numbers, for instance, then we're likely to reach, I think we've probably got 100,000 by now in the UK, because we've got 20,000, and those are just the ones that are hospitalised, and that's generally 1 in 5. So just simple maths, we've probably got 100,000 cases, if you include the mild cases. And so then, and then we've got this, everybody being isolated at home, but isolating at home in a household, then it's very different from flu. And we've got this government that its advisors are using their mathematical models, they're just looking at the maths, and they're not looking at the real world. Real world data doesn't match their model that all their attention is on. And the model built up over years, decades of experience working with flu pandemics, but this is not flu. So they've told us all to self-isolate at home in households, and they don't explain very strongly that you've got to self-isolate from anyone with a cough. If anyone in your household has a COVID-19 like a persistent cough and a fever, then you should be isolating from them. You have not, you almost certainly have not got it yet, if that has happened. Unlike flu, COVID-19 is not airborne. They have found no evidence of it being airborne yet, even after 500,000 cases. And it spreads very slowly over many weeks. And even people living together, even a couple, then typically they don't give it to each other. And it takes, typically it's only 1 in 10 gets it, though sometimes one will give it to the entire household. Many households, nobody gets it. So if you can isolate someone who's got a cough, like their own cutlery, their own bathroom, not just if they're vulnerable, the UK government only says to do that if they're vulnerable, for anyone who's got a cough. But the UK government is not doing this. And many people don't know to do that. It's not being stressed enough. And if it was China, then they would be going around testing. And so they were saying in the WHO press conference today, what we should be doing now is going around, now we've got lockdown, we've reduced the number of contacts of everyone from an average of 20, 15, 20 or more, to an average of 4 contacts, or 8, 10, 8, even down to 4 for each person. That's what they found. With people who are still doing contact tracing, like Spain, then that's what they find happens, that the physical distancing reduces the number of contacts. But you haven't got rid of the problem, because they can still pass it to those fewer contacts. So what you have to do then, you've simplified your problem, you haven't got rid of it. You then have to isolate these people from their 4 contacts. If you don't do that, it's still going to increase. And the United Kingdom is not doing that, so I expect it still to increase. At least it's certainly going to increase somewhat. Every household has got a COVID-19 patient in it. Then because they're not doing the proper isolation, quite a few of those will end up having more. And so, and then, because they still stay in the same household, if one person got COVID-19, got a dry cough and a fever, after a while, maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, another one has, and then they keep it isolated, another few weeks later another one has, so eventually it gets to everyone. And so this is going to be increasing, it's still going to be increasing by people being cooped up in households. It is not the right thing to do unless you also go aggressively after this virus. If you do that, then it helps. So reducing it to 4 contacts is a great help if you then go aggressively after the virus. And then you find all the ones that have got it. And if we were to actually not just go after people with coughs and fever, but if we were to actually be able to test all the people in the United Kingdom, then it could go down very fast. Because as I said before, Uganda, or however you pronounce it, then they got down from 3% to 0.3% in 2 weeks. So as I was saying, that's why I was talking there, that's why I was here. So now suppose we've got 100,000, and suppose that because we're not really slowing it down very much yet, because we're not doing the right things, then by the end of this week, we could have 500,000, if it keeps increasing at the same rate as before, of the mild cases, and we could have 250,000 if it's only kind of doubling in a bit in a week. And we'd be surprised if it's less than 200,000 by the end of this week in the United Kingdom. And so we're building up a huge problem once we realise it. But then if we had 400 of these machines, we could test 200,000 people in, we could test many more than that. We could test 500,000 people in half a day. So in terms of the tests, then you've got to go, people going around actually doing the tests. But then, so you're going to have lots of people having to do that as well, collecting collecting the samples, but actually doing the tests could be very fast. And you could also, if you had 400 of these machines, then with just 2 days of tests, you could test absolutely everyone in the NHS health force. And another couple of, I don't know how many patients we have in the United Kingdom in all the hospitals, but could do that pretty fast as well. So it's certainly within our ability. So if we can rise to building 22,000 Spitfires, I think we can rise to building 400 of these machines, which are probably about equivalent to a Spitfire in terms of our current technology compared to what Spitfire was to World War II. I'm just guessing, and this is not based on any kind of working out of the man hours involved, but a lot of man hours must be involved in making a Spitfire. A big, very complicated machine for their time. So that's that bit. So we need a massive scale up in diagnostic testing, and it's not necessarily it's going to be that machine. There may be other ways of doing it, but one way or another, I think that once we realise quite what serious a problem we have, we're going to have a very serious problem by the end of this week. And once we realise that, then I think we're going to rise to it, and we're going to have to do a massive, huge scale up in diagnostic testing. As I say here, I'm linking to Jeremy Hunt, who's former health secretary, and if only it was him who was involved in doing all this, because he has clearly recognised but he isn't a decision maker at this stage. He's just criticising, even though he's conservative himself. So United government has to have a massive scale up in diagnostic testing, and it's got a massive scale up in contact tracing. So either you have an absolutely vast scale up, and you test absolutely everyone, then that's very, very fast. Then you don't need to do the contact tracing because you find them just through testing everyone. And they find even the pre-symptomatic ones, who we would normally find by contact tracing, you find them by just testing everyone. The other way is to do a massive scale up in contact tracing. So you test everyone who's got it, and then you go and find all their contacts. And China, South Korea and Italy have all shown, and this is how the UK knows how to do contact tracing. They did it. This is actually from a graphic the United Kingdom did to explain how it was doing contact tracing before it decided to stop doing it. And so we need to go back to doing that, and we can rise to it. As I say, we have a huge challenge now, but we can rise to it with the legendary British fighting spirit. So every country, they think of this as being British fighting spirit, but as I explained, did I explain it? In the United Kingdom, we think of the United Kingdom as having fought off the Nazis during World War II with our Spitfires, as being the main reason why Nazis didn't overrun the United Kingdom, and we think that if they did overrun the United Kingdom, the rest of the world wouldn't have had much of a chance. So we think that we single-handedly pretty much stopped them long before the Americans got involved. I know every country has its own narrative about that, but that's our narrative, so I'm trying to appeal to it. With our legendary fighting spirit, then we can stop this virus. So we must resume contact tracing on a massive scale, and so I explained that. So, and this is about that I explained, but I think I say that this Euganeo in Italy was tested without symptoms, got down to 3%, 0.3%, and nothing. So, oh yes, I still haven't said it. I must say it now. Okay, I'll say it properly now. So we go back to that. So suppose we had, let's take the worst case, put 500,000 cases by the end of next week. Then, if we did the full Euganeo method, we tested all those, not just all those 400 to 500,000, but actually everyone in the UK. Then 2 weeks later, we would have 50,000. A month later, we would have 5,000. So 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, we'd have 500. 8 weeks later, we'd have 50. And 10 weeks later, we're down to 5, and 12 weeks later, 3 months, we'd have got over it. So even at 500,000, if we were to do a massive amount of testing, we could get over it if we could manage a 90% reduction every 2 weeks. Then we would be able to get over it in about 3 months. But as you can see from that, we are really making it much, much harder for us. Because like Wuhan got over it in pretty much a month. South Korea did. Got over theirs pretty much in a month. But by letting it build up so high, if we get it as high as 500,000, we're talking about maybe 3 months to get over it. So you either do it by contact tracing, or you do it by doing loads and loads of samples. But I think we're going to be several months before we're completely over it in the United Kingdom, and chances are. But we can do it. We can stop it. And if only we had done that, there's no point in doing an if only. If we can stop it now, then so if we stop it now at probably, 100,000, then it goes 100,000, 10,000, 1,000, 100, 10, 1. So that's 100,000, 2 weeks is 10,000, 2 weeks is 1,000, so that's 4 weeks. 6 weeks is 100, 8 weeks is 10, and then you're down to, it's the same thing, 12 weeks for 1, but you've got down to 1 now. And but once you get down to 100, then people will say, oh, this is much better, and then we'll be able to, and that sort of level, then even once you go down to 1,000, then society will be returning pretty much to normal, but there'll be 1,000 cases, and then they'll all be isolated, and then they'll be contact traced and so on. So that would be 100,000, 4 weeks later you're down to 1,000. If you were to do this very, very, very fast way that they did in Wuhan. Anyway, so our real priorities for Covid-19, according to the WHO, you've got to test all the suspected cases, isolate them, trace all the contacts, ask all the contacts to quarantine themselves, and test all the contacts that have insurance, and isolate anyone who has it 30 to 40 days after they feel completely better, or 2 tests are negative 24 hours apart. And then physical distancing is a defensive measure. All it can do is to buy us time. We can't win without going after the virus. And the United Kingdom is not going after it. We've got to go after it in our hospitals and healthcare systems, in absolute urgency. And in our households, we could go round to the households, finding them, and either removing them to large stadiums and things like they did in China, where people were quarantined, were isolated from their own household in these big stadiums and places, mild cases, in order to protect their own household. Or their own household has, the clinician goes and inspects, and they decide that these people are capable of isolating them with a sufficiently rigorous way, both temperamentally able to do it, and also, they haven't got Alzheimer's, they're not sort of incapacitated in one way or another, and they're able to understand the instructions. And then also you've got to know that they have the facilities like a separate bathroom for the Covid-19 to do it properly. So anyway, they've got to do all that. So now, I just want to just talk briefly about this, because I've talked about it before. I've done some new graphics and I've fixed a few things. So the key difference is, the reason the United Kingdom is not doing that, as I said, is because they're locked up in this little idea of a mathematical model. They're looking at the maths, and they're not looking at the real world. As someone who trained as a mathematician, I know very well what it's like to get totally wrapped up in a mathematical world. And that's basically what they're doing. And they're just totally caught up in the maths, and they're just not noticing that the maths is not fitting the real world data. The maths is very impressive, very polished, very well worked out probably. Over many years, decades of working with influenza epidemics and pandemics, but this is not influenza. So The virus that this causes is not airborne, except for some medical procedures. In their mathematical model, it is airborne and can be transmitted just by breathing. Most transmission in China, about 75 to 85%, happen in households, and most of the rest with some form of close or prolonged contact. In their model, a third of the transmission happens in the community to random strangers, and that just is not possible. With 75 or 85% in households, there's enough percentage left to get your third in that way, and in fact most of the rest is by other forms of close or prolonged contact. So there is transmission in workplaces, but only for close contact. The people generally know each other. That's why the contact tracing works. And then they say nearly all the transmission for cases that show no symptoms at some point. This is why the contact tracing works. So if there is any asymptomatic spread, it happens, well, it does happen before they get the symptoms, and that is a significant factor. The contact tracing can stop that by catching these people before they go off and infect people. But there doesn't seem to be asymptomatic spreading, or people just never show any symptoms who then infect others. There could be asymptomatic spreading, like of school children, who just get it from adults, but don't pass it on to anyone else. Then that they don't have any symptoms, maybe most of them don't have any symptoms, but don't pass it on to anyone. That is possible, but it can't have asymptomatic spreading where the people who are asymptomatic pass it on to other people. And that's the three reasons why their model is not fitting reality. And so yeah, the UK policy, that the WHO said can be stopped, UK said can't. Test every suspected case, only test they need to overnight stay in hospital. Caring for infected people at home, they put others at risk. The United Kingdom say that if you're infected with suspected Covid-19, it's likely that everyone else has it. So they just don't see this point, that we absolutely have to go around and find the Covid-19 cases and stop them infecting other people in their household. The United Kingdom just doesn't see that needs to be done. At some point it will see it. So these people who do these models, they are scientists. Above all, they care about reasoning and logic, and they, at some point, it's going to be a big shock to them. Then they're going to see that their models are not working, and they're not going to deny it once they see it. They're people. I'm sure they have great intellectual rigor and intellectual. They are. Words are missing my mind. I often forget words, but they have integrity. I'm sure they've got intellectual integrity. So once they see this, then it'll be a great shock for them too. And you might wonder, how can anybody else? How is it that these people are so expert and not seeing it? Well, people get blinded by their own expertise sometimes. The expertise blindfolds them, puts blinkers on, and they can't see things that other people who don't have that expertise can see. And so the people in WHO but they can see because they're not caught up in these mathematical models. They're very much practical, involved in the day-to-day stopping epidemics around the world. They use the work of the modelers, but they check very carefully if it fits the reality of what they're doing before they use them. So they are not caught up in this mathematical model and the decades of background of flu influenza. And then, for instance, Bill Gates, he's involved in mathematical modelling, and he's trying to find models that work better for COVID-19 than the likes of the Imperial College. He says that the Imperial College one doesn't fit the data. And that's just the situation, it doesn't. They can't model what happened in China. And so, but they're just saying, well, our model must be right, there's something wrong with the data. You shouldn't do that, of course. But it's only human. They're human beings. They're not kind of like Spock or Data on Star Trek. So that's it. I said it's a stealthy virus. the most important thing, I've talked about that before, the most important thing is that you can protect yourself. So our government, because it thinks it's airborne, they don't realise that you can totally protect yourself. And that's why you're getting all these people getting Covid-19. The WHO experts are not getting Covid-19 because they, and even after spending 9 days in visiting China's worst Covid-19 hotspots, he can come away and say, I don't have Covid-19, I'm very low risk. And he's giving his talks and so on, and he's not got Covid-19. That's over a month ago. And Maria Van Kerkhove, she's not got Covid-19, she's always there on the panel. And these are people who spent 9 days in China, going around the very worst places for Covid-19. And they know how to protect themselves. And if it was airborne, they would have it by now. Because they weren't protecting against airborne, they were protecting against the droplets and the and washing their hands frequently. But they, as you said, they've run safe. They studied how this disease works. They knew it very well from the practical data from China, and they knew how to be safe in China. And that's what they did. And if you do the same, then you also can be safe. But I talked about that in the last video. So that's the end of this article. So I hopefully that helps you a bit. And so please, so I do this. I help people get very, very scared of all sorts of things. So this is, unlike many of the things that I try to help people with, this is a genuinely, you can well understand people being scared. It is quite a scary situation in its way. But you can keep yourself safe from it. And I'm still very hopeful, because I'm in the UK and I know the sorts of things that the UK is capable of. And I think that once we find out what is going on, that's we as in the government and the country as a whole and the general public, and once they realise, they look around and they see that other people are succeeding and we're not. I look around and see that Italy is well on its way to controlling its outbreak, so is Spain. Iceland is now testing everyone. They're going to get very good data from Iceland to help the modelers look at their models and compare it with the data. Because Iceland is testing just about everyone in a well-contained society. It's got quite a lot of cases. And if they contain their outbreak, and that's going to people around the world who are caught up in these mathematical models, at some point the weight of evidence is going to be just too big, and it'll break through, and they'll just say our models are wrong. And then they have to go back to the drawing board. They will see what's worked, and the government and so on, they will see that these measures are not working, and then we'll have the most difficult problem that any country has ever had for Covid-19, because we let it go so bad. And but I think we're going to rise to it, and eventually stop it. And but it's going to require a massive effort, and every day that we delay before we do this means an even bigger effort that we're going to have to take to eventually stop it. And yes, so, but I think we're going to rise for it, and that's my hope. And so that's the positive side thing. And then as we rise for this, we'll be able to help the other people in other countries as well. I mean, if the United Kingdom can produce 22,000, if we could produce thousands of these, like we produce Spitfires. I mean, our country is pretty stopped. So many businesses in the UK have just stopped. And to get people involved in making these machines, and or whatever it is we do, and that'll get us back working again as well. And so anyway, I hope something like this is going to happen. So just to say, if you join our Facebook group, Doomsday Debunked, then please be sure to read the rules at the head of the group, and that'll help a lot. It helps it to run properly. And if you are trying to help other people there by debunking, especially with COVID-19, there's a big infodemic. There's a whole lot of misleading stuff on the internet. We actually have a policy now of deleting fake medical advice that anybody posts to the group. If we spot it quickly enough. If it's a bit late, people start talking to it, maybe use a debunk again. But please don't post fake medical advice. Like if you've just seen a message saying that, oh, what you've got to do is just drink lots and lots of warm water, and as long as everyone drinks lots of warm water, you won't get COVID-19. This is very dangerous, because if people believe that, it doesn't protect you against COVID-19, obviously, and they might not do the things that do work, that do protect them. So please don't add to the infodemic. Delete those posts, and please try and carefully source if you're trying to help the people who've got or are scared of COVID-19. Please try and check to reliable sources for your information, such as the WHO. And the WHO press conferences, they're absolutely the creme de la creme of reliability on this. They want very careful. And the WHO have just stopped Ebola and the latest outbreak of Ebola in the Congo. They know how to stop outbreaks. They're always responding. 200. You tend to think, oh, the WHO, all they do is this. They eliminated smallpox. They've almost eliminated polio. They've eliminated malaria from many countries. They respond to 200 epidemics a year. I don't mean they as in they as are the ones doing all this. They're the ones who provide the scientific, evidence-based advice to do this. They do the coordination. They give people the help to understand how to do what they need to do. And they're on the spot, and they have their own warehouses of equipment they ship to help countries that are states that are struggling and so on. And by the way, I was very glad to hear they have got nearly their full 625 million as of today of the fund of the COVID-19 response fund, which is the amount that they thought was needed for 3 months of action in Africa and the countries with poor healthcare. So we are getting countries actually stepping up and helping them with their efforts, and also in more practical ways, in working out how to increase the supply of masks and medical gear and so on. And the United Kingdom can be part of that effort. And as I say, if we're making lots of diagnostic machines, I think we might end up be doing that. I hope so. Anyway, so hope this helps some of you, and to be a little bit less scared and just be a bit more sort of, we're in this situation and let's fight, let's do what we can. So I to keep our spirits up. I mean, our country has been through World War II. We can certainly manage this. Things were much darker then than they are now. People have no idea. I have no idea. I wasn't around in World War II, but I've read about it and heard about it. And, anyway, when my grandfather was a little personal anecdote. My grandfather was one of the very few people flying planes in World War One. He went right back to the time when they fired guns. They just took pistols up with them into what does my nose mustn't do that. They took pistols up into the air and then fired them at other people. I'm Buddhist, and I would never become a soldier, but I do admire the kind of fighting spirit of some soldiers. So there's something there about what human beings are capable of in the very worst situations. So the kind of spirit of it, without the kind of obviously the spirit behind being able to fight something. So I don't mind using this analogy for these machines. Anyway, I'll stop this now.